Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Professor Silas Odongo, and my channel is Professor Silas Odongo's Knowledge Hub. Ladies and gentlemen, I continue to appreciate you because of being with me along this journey. My channel is Professor Silas Odongo's Knowledge Hub, and today allow me to talk to you about sustainable forest resource use in a changing climate. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been talking about climate change and the various impact and effects that it has. Today we talk about forests, and you know quite a great deal about forest. We have always said that climate change will cause high temperatures or altered precipitation and even patterns that we have. We normally experience very high extreme weather events when climate change strikes, and we've been able to experience a great deal of things. Probably we look at the extensive forest fires that we have, or the wildfires that we have. We also have climate change causing pests and diseases, particularly which affect biodiversity, affects life in the forest, and even the ecosystem's functionality. Specifically, ladies and gentlemen, climate change increases high temperatures and prolonged drought, particularly in forest, which causes a lot of problem with the vegetation. Because when fire then comes, the forest gets gutted away very easily. I also mentioned about pest and diseases outbreak, for example. We know that extreme temperatures that we associate with climate change will allow pests to reproduce at very high speed, very high rate. They also expand range, and these ones affect our forest in ways that we can only imagine. We also have climate change causing a lot of changes in the species that we have in the forest, and even the distribution of forests that we have. If we have altered growth and productivity in forests, then you can imagine how that will affect lives that we have, particularly the biodiversity lives there. We would have also disrupted ecological services that we get from the forest, leave alone the socioeconomic impact that climate change has on forests. So what do we do when we know that forests are negatively affected by climate change? Do we do the business as usual, or do we change tact? Changing tact would mean that we employ another way of dealing with climate change, particularly as it affects forests, by adopting sustainable forest resources use. So sustainable forest resources use will refer to our stewardship, the way we use forest in ways that we maintain the biodiversity in the forest, we maintain productivity, and we give room for regeneration capacity of this forest so that we can still achieve the vitality or the potential of this forest to or outlive our lives here. We look at the ecological, we look at the economical, we look at sociological functions that forest will have. So we need to have a balanced approach that will ensure that we use the forest and its products in ways that will meet our needs now, without compromising the ability of the same forest to be able to really support future generations to be able to manage their own needs and their own lives. So if we look at unsustainable ways by which we have managed forests before, like instances when people deplete forest resources, we cut down trees, we do deforestation, we do what we call long-term social and even environmental impacts on forest in ways that we will have to really rethink if we have to live. We think about ways by which we can challenge our failure with forests by adopting principles that can enable us to manage forests so that the annual rate of cutting down forest trees will not exceed the annual forest growth. Those are the kind of things we are talking about. So if we engage in unsustainable forest practices, like we do excessive logging, we have had situations where a lot of logging takes place, a lot of overcutting of forest trees to mine the products of the forest. We're having forests being converted to agricultural land. We cultivate in forest. We've been able to get into the forest and get firewood or burn charcoal, thereby reducing forests that we are having. Look at cases where sometimes we are forced to clear forest so that we are able to look for minerals. People have been able to mine gold, copper, oil, and even gas in forested areas. And when they do this, they cut down trees. We've been able to have situations where we have very weak governance and policy governance with regard to how we manage forests and forest resources. We've been able to grow in numbers, very high population growth, so that there is very huge demand on forests. We look at forests as a solution to our needs. Look at the demand that we have put on forest, causing a lot of problems. So how do we manage forest? How do we manage forest resources in ways that will be sustainable so that they meet our immediate needs and even the needs of future generations? We can only do that if we were to follow certain guiding principles, like ecological sustainability. Is it possible, for example, to maintain forest health so that we have biodiversity being kept in the forested areas? Is it possible that we can protect soil and water resources so that we can conserve and regenerate forests naturally, because that's what is expected? Is it possible that when we look at forests and how we manage them, we are guided by economic viability, for example? Is it possible for us to come up with long-term frameworks that will enable forests to continuously give us their products? The products could include trees, medicine, and all those things that we have got from the forest. Is it possible that for us to use this approach, we need to be socially responsible? Look at the aspect of social responsibility. We know that we have various rights and needs, particularly as communities around forest. Is it possible that we can depend on forests in ways that we don't deplete them? We promote them so that the resources can continuously be used to fill our needs. How might we do this? We can engage a number of strategies and practices that we call sustainable strategies and practices if we have to live with forest in ways that will be sustainable even for our future generations. How about if we go for selective logging? We only harvest matured trees so that you don't harvest all products. There are people who will go to the forest and even cut down younger trees. We need to allow forests to naturally regenerate, to naturally grow by selectively logging. We can do reforestation and even afforestation. Is it possible that we can be able to replant trees in places where we have harvested? Do we have such kind of policies and measures that we can do? Planting trees or on places that have already been degraded lands, for example. And in these cases, it is nowadays recommended that we use the native species. Are we able to reduce the impact of logging, whereby we reduce soil disturbances when we are doing logging in forest? Because we do careful logging. Is it possible that we can build roads carefully that will support our operations? We also procure and use specialized equipment that will not allow us to continue to destroy trees or even forest products that we were not intending. Look at forest health and protection. Is it possible that we can have mechanisms by which we can monitor forest and check how to control pests, how to control diseases, and even wildfires? Is it possible that we can, even if we were to use burning as a means to doing it, are we able to use controlled burning? How about controlled planning or integrated planning approach so that we are able to deal with forest as a place where we find timber, wildlife, and all this, and so many stakeholders will come around to help in the adaptation? Is it possible that we can protect riparian lands or buffers so that we can maintain what we call the vegetated zones, where we deal with problems that can occur in forests, like soil erosion? Is it possible that we can keep habitats for wildlife such that we don't end up getting into the forest in ways that will cause us all these problems? Now, those are called sustainable forest resource practices. To do it, it's not very easy because we have a lot of interest with forest. There are a number of interests, there are a number of stakeholders that are supposed to consume the products of forest. So there's ways in which we need to balance. So some of the challenges that we have with regard to forest resource use, particularly using the sustainable approach, is balancing all these competing demands. It is not easy to reconcile our appetite for forest products, particularly when we also are oblivious of the environmental preservation and social equity demands that we require for sustainability. Look at climate change impact on forest. We are having unpredictable weather patterns. We are having increased drought. We are having forest fires that threaten everything. Is it possible that we can challenge all this? Look at deforestation and the degradation of drivers that we are having. A lot of pressure being put on forest. Are we going to deal with them? Illegal logging. Look at agricultural expansion. People want to do agriculture, so they want to get that piece of land where forests. Governance policy gaps that we are having. Is it possible that we can deal with inadequate enforcement of laws and policies that we have with regard to managing our forest? Look at resources that we are having, very inadequate. So how do we deal with them? Sometimes people go to affect forested spaces because of lack of information. Is it possible for us to create capacity or build capacity of these people so that they can help us? Ladies and gentlemen, today I was just talking to you about how we can manage our forest, how we can manage the resources that are found in the forest so that we use them to satisfy our needs and demands today without compromising future lives of people who will also have to deal with them or to depend on them. And I've been able to give you some of the impact of climate change on forests, like increasing temperature, causing a lot of problems, or exacerbating forest fires. I've been able to talk about biodiversity loss, talking about socioeconomic impact, disruption of so many ecological services in the forest. I've been able to give you the concept of sustainable forest resource use and some of the practices that we have talked about, like looking at selective logging. Is it possible that we can only harvest matured trees? Reforestation and afforestation, reducing impact logging, forest health and protection. Is it possible that we can protect riparian environment because they are going to be helpful with regard to safeguarding forest? And we talked about certain principles that must guide all this. This is what we call ecological sustainability. When you are doing all these things, you must be oblivious about health, biodiversity, resilience. Look at economic viability. You do things because there is a way in which you have done cost-benefit analysis. Social responsibility, because you need to be responsible in the way you use natural resources. Selective logging, we have talked about all that. And ladies and gentlemen, I've also been able to point out some of the ways by which we have been able to have negatively affect forest, what I have called unsustainable forest practices, like excessive logging, cutting down trees haphazardly, clearing forest when you want to make way, or overgrazing in forest so that you compact land and or soil and all that, overgrown population and all those things. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me today to stop there and ask you to continue to support by liking, sharing, and subscribing to my channels, only available at Professor Silas Odongo's Knowledge Hub. Thank you and welcome again.